By no means the last, but close to my final broadcast appearance on television.
Vampires don't come into being. Vampires are. Like all spirit creatures, they existed before us. As far as we're concerned, a vampire, to all intents and purposes, is a reanimated corpse. But of course, the active agent is demonic. And without that supernatural presence, the corpse would just be a natural corpse. I haven't ever seen a genuine, real vampire which could ever be mistaken for a living person. And if anyone has looked upon a real vampire, they'll know it's no glamorous, sexy, sensual actor such as we've seen portrayed in films, but something quite disgusting, horrendous, and frightening. The one thing we can be grateful for is that the vampire is not invulnerable. They fear and shrink from many things. You'll hope not to be confronted by a vampire, because in which case you would have to use holy water, something like this. Thenceforward, hold the cross aloft during much of this, and ideally you would place the point and with one blow drive the stake through its heart. The battle is on all the time, and our enemies are not human beings. Our enemies are the evil spirits, the demonic entities. But like anyone who's aware of such things, it becomes natural and normal, not aberrant and unusual. The most powerful weapon the vampire has is that so few people any longer believe in it.
Catherine and I have been hunting real vampires, but we haven't staked one through the heart. Some folk, however, can and do make such a claim. Even in modern England, there are those convinced that vampires present a real physical threat and are prepared to dedicate their lives to seeking them out. Britain's best-known vampire hunter is Bishop Seán Manchester, who's been in pursuit of all things satanic for more than 30 years.
The problem with mankind is that it cannot cope with supernatural reality at all, it would seem, in our day and age, where smirking scepticism and cynicism reign. These times are ripe for such as the demonic to flourish.
Catherine has a graveyard rendezvous with the Right Reverend Seán Manchester, a bishop of the old Catholic Church, to find out what it takes to be a real-life vampire hunter.
And these are the accoutrements of anyone engaged in exorcism. The less familiar accoutrements would be contained in this small case here, which are peculiar to the vampirologist. Well, of course, the familiar crucifix, which is absolutely essential, the holy water. These are small stakes, but nevertheless will suffice, as have been blessed, of course, and the mallet, which will duly drive the stake through the undead heart with one blow. That's quite heavy. In past centuries, the larger version was frequently preferred. The more refined version, which started to appear in, I suppose, Victorian and Edwardian times, was, I think, rather like mobile phones. They got smaller and smaller, and so they'd be easier and easier to carry.
Manchester first established his vampire hunting credentials when he was drawn into the weird and now infamous case of the Highgate vampire. In 1970, strange things were reported around London's most famous cemetery. Local residents claimed to have seen a mysterious apparition.
The general description would be it was like a dead person that floated along the ground, quite tall, a dark figure, a terrifying expression on the face. A number of dead foxes have been discovered in the cemetery, completely drained of blood.
Completely drained of blood?
Yes, to the point where the RSPCA inspector couldn't gain enough blood for forensic examination.
But, according to Manchester, animals were not the only victims. A number of people claimed to have been attacked in the cemetery, and Manchester became convinced a vampire was at work when a local schoolgirl named Elizabeth began to suffer from severe anemia and night terrors.
She betrayed all the symptoms of a classic case of what can only best be described as vampirism, invading her environment in the dark hours to quaff some of her blood and certainly much of her energy. The most disturbing thing was her predisposition to somnambulating, sleepwalking in the direction of Highgate Cemetery. The focus, the pulsating heart of all this supernatural energy was somewhere in the western half.
Manchester believed that the vampire was feeding on Elizabeth and then returning to its lair in the western half of the nearby cemetery. Taking matters into his own hands, he located the crypt and descended into darkness. He claims that he found the vampire's coffin, opened it, and gazed into the face of the bloated corpse.
What made you conclude that it was a supernatural entity rather than, for example, a very sick human being?
There were certain telltale signs, and they are usually the eyes that are invariably fixed, glazed and staring. And sometimes a trickle of what one must assume to be the previous night's feast. Having witnessed for myself and with my assistants in its undead slumber, I then attempted to perform a spoken exorcism using the Latin rite, and it was totally ineffective.
How did you know it didn't work?
One or two people died. A number of people died. Well, a number of people died, but in that early period, there was two that one could safely say that, I would safely say, that was directly attributable to the vampiric pestilence.
He returned to the crypt to try again, but this time the vampire's coffin had mysteriously disappeared.
It is possible that the relocation of the corporeal form of the vampire was due to occult or satanic emissaries interfering.
Manchester was convinced that the coffin had been spirited away by the servants of evil. Determined to catch his prey, he tracked the vampire down to a nearby Gothic mansion.
In that instant that the stake impaled the undead heart, the state of putrefaction which had been denied for possibly centuries overtook the physical remains. It did discolour, turned to a brown sludge almost.
With the vampire destroyed, peace returned to Highgate, and Elizabeth slept soundly once more. But according to Bishop Manchester, the vampire is never far away.
The greatest strength in such as the vampire and all of that demonic legion is our inability, refusal or failure to believe in it. It's because we disbelieve that it proliferates and grows strong.
Well, Buffy, he isn't. I'm a little perplexed about what to make out of what I just saw. I just saw a demonstration of vampire staking technique. I heard a description of vampires that walk in modern day London, and I'm stuck. Because on one hand, in order to believe everything that Manchester has said, I would really need to see some concrete evidence. Guess I would need to see the corpse myself. But in order to make sense really out of what he's saying, I think we just need to look to the big picture. If you believe in good spirits walking the earth, why not bad? And equally, if you believe in vampires, then you need vampire hunters.
While Catherine and I have not had Bishop Manchester's good fortune, or perhaps misfortune, in coming face to face with a real vampire, our journey has revealed some shocking truths about how hugely influential vampirism has been in our society. But why is it that we continue to be fascinated by this legend?